That's great. And hello, Rick Weingard. So this is what we're going to do today. It's almost 2:05. I'm going to go ahead and go over the schedule so you know what's going to happen. We're going to first do the board candidates because that is so very important. These are the folks that are going to join continuing board members in running DOD on March 1. So we'll have those introductions. They'll introduce themselves. Then I'm going to see if anyone has any nominations from the floor for the board. Then I will turn the meeting over to Nettie Thompson, our program chair, who was going to introduce our two guest speakers today, who will talk about the vaccine and Riverside County's vaccine program. And I know Greg Rodriguez is already on the line with us, followed by Q&A. We'll also do a short Q&A after the board candidates. Excuse me. So I want to tell everyone too that Jimmy is recording this meeting. So he will make it available for anyone who wants to go back and listen to anything on it. Excuse me, I've got a cough. And no, I'm fine. Just a tickle in my throat. So let's see, it's 2:06. So what I'd like to do.
Dory, may I interrupt you? I'm going to mute everybody. So Dory, unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Give me a nod. Okay, good. All right. So normally I would start with the executive committee candidates, but Erin Teran, who is running for program chair, is treating COVID patients right now. And she told me she would call in around 2:10. Oh, here she is. Just got a new patient, but going to try to step away in 5 minutes. Okay. So she's working on the border treating COVID patients and working in Indio treating COVID patients. And she got COVID herself last fall. So she's amazing. So what I want to do is start with the program chair candidates, and Robert Hildebrand is with us. He's running for program chair against Erin Teran. So Robert, you've got 3 minutes. Jimmy, can you unmute him or unmute yourself, Robert?
What's the last name?
Hildebrand.
All right.
Okay. I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
I got
Go ahead.
Well, when Dory sent out her call for people to serve on the board, you know, since we're all isolating at home, I'm self-isolating at home, I thought maybe I could do something like program share, give a way to contribute and give back and help fill up my time. But I just lost you guys.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay. I have to be careful not to touch anything. Anyway, I thought program chair was something that I could do. I am a person that is a senior, and I am LGBT, and I am disabled. So if I were to go to a convention, I'd be in a lot of different meetings, I guess. But anyway, Dory, you sent out to everybody the blurb I sent you.
Yes, we made it available to everybody.
So she said, do one paragraph. And I had written up a page about my life because I'm in my 70s, just barely in my 70s. So that gives sort of a snapshot of some of the things I have done. What I want to say about my past is I have 31 years of experience as a municipal transit manager and administrator, and I've worked in local government all that time. I have 2 master's degrees in political science. Well, actually, one of them is in public management from UC Irvine, and I went to UNC Chapel Hill, as did Dory, which was a big surprise.
Yeah, funny.
But what I want to say about what What I would like to do as program chair is have something of a theme, like bring you guys speakers from the public sector. Not only the people that we have elected, but those folks who are, the behind the scenes, faceless bureaucrats, so to speak, who put the programs into effect and design the programs, plan the programs. It's all that kind of work that I did for 31 years.
Robert?
Yes.
Could I interrupt you? Dory, Aaron just joined the call or the meeting.
Okay, let's let Robert finish. Thank you for letting us know. Go ahead, Robert.
How much time do I have?
35 seconds.
35 seconds. So I want to try to have something of a theme, like it would be public sector folks, but I would also have speakers who address, hot issues when they come up. And I would like to start out with addressing police reform here in our valley before somebody gets killed. I served on the Long Beach Citizens Police Complaint Commission for 2 years before I retired. And so I was also on their Public Safety Advisory Commission, and I have some background in public safety, and I can get in touch with some of those folks to talk about what they're doing and its success. They're having in Long Beach, so they haven't had any deaths since the early 90s.
That's great.
Police officer shooting. So
Okay, your
that's
time
what
is up, Robert.
that's what I would start with. And
Yes.
so
Okay.
I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And now, if you'll mute yourself, Robert, and Aaron, you're next. Aaron Teran.
Hi, hello everyone. Sorry, I'm calling from the hospital, so I hope the reception's okay. The
Yes.
internet's not very good here. My name's Erin Teran. I'm a registered nurse, and I, had an opportunity to talk to Dory about the programs chair seat, and I was really excited to run for a position with Democrats of the Desert. I've lived in the Coachella Valley my entire life. I am a lifelong Democrat from the time that I was 18 years old. I have registered to vote every year, or every election. And it wasn't until about 2016 when Trump won office that I really decided to get involved. I sat on the board of Democratic Women of the Desert. I served as their programs chair and then also as their president for 2 years. I helped out with their scholarship program as well, and also helped out with other campaigns throughout the valley. I actually ran for office this year, and while we didn't get the voter outreach that we needed, we were able to get a turnout of about 87% in our district. So it's something I'm really proud of, and hope to maybe run for something in the future. However, I would still like to stay involved. I've been working throughout the pandemic since March. And, while it's taken a lot of my schedule, I've still, managed to really manage my time well, I guess you could say. I'm currently working 2 jobs. I'm in El Centro working a temporary contract, which will be up in about 6 weeks. And I'm also working as a staff development coordinator at the Indio Mental Health Hospital, where I do all of our training and I do our education. So I'm constantly having to rethink themes and ways to really reach our employees and our staff to keep them up to date on their training. And so I'd like to take the same approach with this position. I'd like to survey the members of DOD to see what they'd like to see at their upcoming meetings. And sorry, I'm getting out of breath. Been running around. And I'd also like to make sure that I can work with the board in conjunction to really, ensure that we're bringing, some fresh, creative programs for the members. So thank you so much for your time. Sorry, I won't be able to stay for the entire meeting.
That's okay, Erin. You're doing very important work, and we're so glad that you're running for an important office on DOD. Thank you so much for taking your time out to give us your pitch today.
Well, thank you so much for fitting me in today, and I wish everyone a happy weekend, and please stay safe. Remember to wear your masks and social distance.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Okay. So Can you still hear me?
Yes.
There's a nice photo of Aaron. Okay. So that was Robert Hildebrand and Aaron Tehran, who are both running for program chair. And now I want to move to the executive committee of the board. The three offices are running that are on the executive committee are the president, treasurer, and executive secretary. So first I'd like to let Stephen Jaffe introduce himself to all of us. He's running for president.
Hello, folks. I'm a lot more comfortable talking about issues than I am myself, but I'll do what I can here. I've had two very long careers, one of them legal and one of them political with the Democratic Party. Those two careers have really intersected a great deal because my legal career has been representing individuals in employment matters and some kinds of civil rights matters. So my values as a Democrat and my values as a lawyer have happily not collided with one another very often, if at all. My first memories of being involved in politics was when I was a teenager. I worked on one of the campaigns for Senator Phil Hart in Michigan. I got involved in legal civil rights matters in law school. I've getting to more recent times. My wife and I were two of the co-founders of a Democratic club in San Francisco, where I lived for many years, and I became the president of that as well. I have run for political office several times. I ran in the Democratic primary for the US Congress in the 12th District of California, which is San Francisco, and I was challenging none other than the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. I was a pretty ardent supporter of Bernie Sanders and agreed with pretty much his entire platform and continue to do so. I think he's kind of an amazing guy and still is. I also ran for local office for the Rancho Mirage City Council recently. So I'm looking forward to serving. I'll close with saying what I've said before. I have an absolutely impossible act to follow. Nobody is Dory Smith. Nobody can be Dory Smith. I'm not going to try to be Dory Smith, but she's promised to stick around and help, which I intend to hold her to that. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. I'm much better answering questions and talking about issues than I am myself, but anytime, just get in contact with me. Thank you.
We'll have a short Q&A after every candidate speaks. Thank you, Stephen, for those kind words.
Right.
Actually, being responsible for DOD and trying to keep it going helped keep me sane, I think, through this already tough year. It's great to have a purpose, and that was my purpose. So next, I'd like to introduce Megan Stroh-Snyder, who has been our treasurer and is running again to fill that position. Megan?
Hi, thank you, Dory. I'm glad to be here. So my activism is much like Aaron's. It started, well, I grew up as a lifelong Democrat. My parents were Democrats. This will age, you guys will be entertained by this. Some of my earliest memories were watching the Iran-Contra trials with my dad when I was like 6. So I was quite young during the Reagan. I was born the year before Reagan took office. So my first 8 years of life were under a Reagan administration. So I remember, you know, all of that well as a young child. Wasn't overly political in high school and college, or even early in my life. I lived in San Francisco. Had the opportunity, I lived in Gavin Newsom's district when he was running for city council in San Francisco. And I remember shaking his hand at the Muni stop one morning. He was out canvassing, saying hello to people. So that was my little claim to fame in my early 20s. But then, you know, I had a career going, I had some young kids, and really politics, I was proud to be represented by President Obama, and certainly enjoyed that time. but really became politically active in 2016. After the election, I looked around and thought, how am I going to raise, my kids are 11 and 7 now, so they were 3 and 6, 8, however old they would be, 7 at the time. And so I looked around and thought, how am I going to do this? Like, how do I explain this to my kids and how do I make this okay? And the answer for me was that the only way to move forward was to be part of the solution. So the way I explained what we were facing to my kids was to start bringing them to DOD meetings and get involved. And I've been the treasurer for 2 years and look forward to continuing that. Professionally, I'm an engineer turned into a finance manager. So the role of working with numbers, while I can't do simple math of 11 minus 4 on the spot, I actually am quite good at numbers and enjoy putting together our finances and keeping us up to date. I'm really proud of the amazing work this organization does and the donations that we make to candidates. So I'm glad to be able to be part of keeping track of that and making sure that we're able to continue with that. So with that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Megan, very much. And so the next position that's part of the executive committee is the executive secretary, and we have 2 folks running for that slot, Jackie Lopez and Laverne Sheehan. And so Jackie just joined us, and I'm going to ask her to go ahead and talk to us.
Thank you, Dory. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in today and listening to a little bit about me. So some of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie Lopez. I'm a lifelong resident of Indio. I'm a lifelong Democrat as well. My mother works in the healthcare, and her job for 40 years was about reproductive justice. And my father, he just retired after 40 years with the Letter Carriers Union. And so I have a strong union background. I got my start early on. I apologize. I have my grandson's first birthday behind me. I got my first start working in politics. It was something that I guess a lot of my family members had either had some stake in the community, whether it be community service. And I got my start working with Assembly Member Victor Manuel Perez. I was his field rep and then his press secretary for 6 years. Served with him in the state legislature and went on to be Assembly Member Eduardo Garcia's district director. So almost 10 years with the state legislature. I got to meet many members and worked alongside both Eduardo Garcia and Manuel Perez on legislation. From that point, I was lucky enough to work with our Congressman, Dr. Raul Reese. I was his district director for close to 3 years and was honored to every summer go back to DC and work with Speaker Pelosi. She would put on these training seminars. And not this summer, but the past summer, I had the opportunity to train all the new incoming Democratic Congress members and got to know a lot and got to help. I'm kind of proud of helping out AOC's district director and getting her office set up in New York. From that point on, I decided I want to take a break and start my own business. I have 2 grown boys and I'm a grandmother now, and my grandson just turned 1 today. And so I decided to take a break and open my own business. I have my own consulting business, and my first job was to be Mayor Holstage's campaign manager, and was very honored to accept that job and also be part of making history in helping her be elected as the first woman female mayor, and first bisexual mayor in the nation. So really honored to have that start. And currently right now, I'm just working on infrastructure projects throughout the Coachella Valley and again, building my business.
Okay. Jackie, your time's up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any other key point you want to make?
No, just honored to serve.
Okay.
I'm on the steering committee with Stonewall, and just honored to serve with the
Thank you.
Democrats of the Desert.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
I remember meeting Jackie several years ago at a Democratic Women of the Desert meeting. Her political career has been very impressive. So now we'll hear from Laverne Sheehan, who also is running for executive secretary. Laverne?
Give it a try.
There we
Okay.
go. Okay.
There we are. It had to go up to the other. Yes, I'm Laverne Sheehan, and I have lived in the Coachella Valley about 8 years. I have moved everywhere. So I remember coming into California when they were opposing Gray Davis and going to get rid of him, I gathered, and elected Arnold Schwarzenegger. My husband and I looked at each other, and we had never really registered party. We were fairly independent voters and have voted for both Republicans and Democrats. But ever since then, we're registered Democrats, definitely. And the party platform has always been of what I believe very strongly. So I think that's very important. But when Trump came in, it really became apparent that we really needed to be doing something for our state, our valley, and for the future, because I have 5 grandchildren and they're teenagers, 2 teenagers and 3 elementary school children, including a kindergartner. And I want to think of the world that I can leave them. And so that's when I started working on some political campaigns, just, simply walking and handing out papers and other things. In the past, I belonged to the League of Women Voters and on voter registration and everything. I was a secretary for 2 different administrations of our local, the Democratic Party in Sun City, Shadow Hills, where we live. So when Dory called and said, would you be willing? There was an opening. I said, sure, I'll put my name in the hat. I have a background. I'm a retired educator. I have, 2 different degrees, and I'm a reading specialist and a librarian and all these other good things, but I am retired now. And I feel I have some time to give to the party. Thank you.
Thank you, Laverne, very much.
Mhm.
I love it when people step up, and while it may feel a little awkward, it's nice that we do have more than one person running for a couple of the positions, because sometimes it's hard to get volunteer leadership. So thank you, Laverne, again.
You're
for
very
running.
welcome.
Okay, now we want to move on to another big job that's on the board, and that's the communications chair. And Megan Beeman Jacinto is running for that. So we'll go to Megan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Megan Beeman Jacinto. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a rural working class family, and that upbringing gave me a lot of life experience about the challenges that face workers and families in communities that are often excluded from either the system of justice or education or the government. That background and those experiences led me to become a civil rights attorney and workers' rights attorney, and also a community advocate, working for justice now all around California and even in some other states. I work in my work as a civil rights attorney. It has really grown over time to reflect the needs of the community here in the Coachella Valley. And I should say all of my career has been here in Coachella. I work in very close partnership with nonprofit partners and community leaders and even political leaders across the valley and in the communities to ensure that I'm able to provide the type of representation that the community needs and that it's requesting. In 2018, I was elected to the Coachella City Council. I used to say recently I was elected, but I think that's not so recently anymore. And I was elected with the support of the Democrats of the Desert, and also all of the other Democratic clubs here in the Desert and the Cal Dems. Soon after that, I was appointed to represent our region at the Southern California Association of Governments Regional Council, which is a Southern Cal regional decision-making body. And recently I was also elected the vice chair of the Regional Public Safety Committee and appointed to the Social and Racial Equity Committee of SCAG. So those are some of my obligations recently. But in the last couple of months, I've had some of my political time commitments freed up for different reasons. And so I wanted to look for another place where I could be supportive and helpful in all of our democratic efforts in the desert. And as we've been working on building leadership, and particularly for women across the valley, we've really taken notice of DOD's boldness and independence in its positions on issues and also its support for candidates. And so I felt that this was the right space to offer my support and to help to plug in even more to those efforts. I think I can add my advocacy and communication skills and even some of my relationships and knowledge of political issues and positions to strengthen DOD's efforts as a communications chair. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I hope to get your votes.
Thank you, Megan. We really appreciate you running for office with us. Okay, so now the last position that we have open that we're going to hear from today is the fundraising chair. Frank Figueroa is running for fundraising chair. Frank?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank Figueroa, and I'm glad to be here today. I'm native of the Coachella Valley. I was born here and I was raised in Coachella, and so just some background about myself. I worked in higher education for the past 7 years as a budget manager in several different departments. I worked for the University of California. And so I've been there since I've graduated from the UC Riverside. I've worked there since 2014. So that's kind of my background is finance and management of finance overall in the different departments on the university. I also serve on the Southern Coachella Valley Community Services District. I was elected in 2015, and I was the youngest person elected to that board. I'm also, I recently worked on the Karina Quintanilla for Palm Desert City Council as her campaign manager / finance director. That was a successful campaign where Karina unseated a two-term incumbent and becoming the first Democrat on the Palm Desert City Council. And through that, we did a lot of fundraising, grassroots fundraising to ensure, keeping her campaign moving forward. So I find this position a place where I can help grow Democrats of the Desert, not just for fundraising for candidates, but also fundraising for local purposes, scholarships, other items like that can support this residents of the Coachella Valley and really push them forward and interest them in local politics or even policy making in different ways. So having them be able to move forward. I'm a big proponent of higher education, especially access and equity, because that's one item that isn't talked about a lot is equity in access to higher education, and really providing that information throughout the Coachella Valley. So thanks for allowing me to talk to you all today.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for running for DOD. We really appreciate it. Fundraising is going to be very important, and we'll have some challenges going forward until we can have in-person fundraisers. But Frank and I have talked about creative ways to raise money, and I'm sure he's got lots of ideas too. So I just want to go over everyone's names again. Running on the executive committee, Stephen Jaffe for president, Megan Stroh-Snyder for treasurer, 2 candidates running for executive secretary, Jackie Lopez and Laverne Sheehan. Then the program chair, 2 candidates running for that, Robert Hildebrand and Aaron Tehran. Communications chair, Megan Beeman Jacinto is running for that, and fundraising chair, Frank Figueroa. So now I'm going to ask you, we have so many people on the call that I would love to have more interaction, but to keep things moving along because we want to get to our COVID speakers today. Put any questions you have for any of the candidates in a chat, and I and Jimmy and Nettie will try to keep track of them and ask your question so that you get an answer about the candidates. While you're typing in chat, By the way, if you've not used chat before, it's in the middle bottom of your screen. There's participants, then chat. So you click on chat and it lets you send a message to me or everyone. You can send it to everyone so that everyone sees your questions if you have one, and we'll get to them. While you're thinking about if you have any questions and typing them in, I would like to open the floor for any nominations from any attendees here. And we'll do it the same way. If you have a nomination, you may want to nominate yourself for one of the positions. You may have a friend that you've talked to that you know would be valuable in another position. This is normally we would do this at an in-person meeting, open the floor to, open it to nominations from the floor. So this is the way we're doing it today, is I'm opening it to the whole group that's here for any nominations. We also have given people a chance to send me nominations by email, and I have not received any. So, but if anyone has a nomination, please put it in chat. And so here's a question for Frank. Frank, it looks like you have the capability to bring in more youth activists. Registering, including registering to vote. And that's from Maggie Hamilton. Any thoughts on that, Frank?
Yeah, so I think a big, in this past election cycle, I worked on I also helped out doing precinct walking for Leslie Figueroa for mayor of the city of Coachella, and that really brought out a lot of the youth vote, right? So I think bringing out the youth vote and the activists, and really, the progressive movement in the youth, and really having them be more active in the process, right? Because a lot of the, how do you engage them and really bringing them into clubs, and then I think a lot of them need that information, and going out there and really giving them the information. What are the clubs? What's the difference from a club, and what's the difference from the larger items? I think COD students. I'm a College of the Desert alumni. I went to College of the Desert before going to UC Riverside, and the thing there is, I don't think there's a presence there in a lot of politics, right? Political activists and stuff like that, like in larger universities where you have clubs and items like that. So I think I've been out of the College of the Desert circle for a long time, but I think seeing what type of circles exist there in clubs, and what the ability is there to create a democratic student club on the campus, and if that's allowable with the campus, and really moving that movement there, and getting that larger student group there that can align with maybe Democrats of the Desert, and really pushing that there. So I think there's ways to engage them. It's just the different avenues available, and making sure we can work and grow the young population, and ensuring that they register to vote. And a big thing, now is when you get a driver's license or anything like that, you have the ability to register to vote there, but really pushing it on campus and making them active and giving them the information, even if it's a nonpartisan type of club where people can give out that information. But that's one thing I've noticed different at College of the Desert. Is different than a larger university and campus where you have clubs like Democrats on that campus, or even a Republican club, right? I've seen that in the different places, but bringing that out there, and if it doesn't exist, how do we get that moving, right? And reaching out to those political science professors in that realm. So
thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions in chat. Or I don't see any nominations, but I'll tell you what, if you want to think about nominations, I'll still give you a few days to send me any nominations you have for these positions to president@desertdemocrats.org. Again, president@desertdemocrats.org. Here's a question. This is about communications within the Valley. So this would be for Megan Beeman. How can DOD better strategize so that our messaging as Democrats is more prominent? Many of the letters and columns in the Desert Sun that are from Republicans seem coordinated and use the same talking points we all hear from every Republican in the media. Megan, Frank, if you would mute yourself, and then Megan, Jimmy, can you unmute Megan so maybe she can answer that question and I can help her?
Sure, and I'll try to do my best the way that I understand the various questions there. You know, one of the things that I want to do as communications chair is bring new ideas in terms of how to communicate with the breadth of Democrats in the Valley. And this kind of relates to Maggie's question too about bringing a bit more youth into not only the club, but into the Democratic process and in participation in the campaigns and voting. You know, the world is constantly changing, and some of the traditional forms of communication that are used to reach voters and to reach Democrats in the past are no longer that effective, like the written newsletter by mail, or even billboards and traditional TV ads don't tend to reach a lot of people these days as they used to. And so we have to look at other methods that are much more accessible and accessed by all kinds of people, and in particular youth. And a lot of that actually happens through social media these days. And there are tons of forms of social media. So it's not just about Facebook or Instagram, but, you know, looking at all of the options that are out there and starting to elevate DOD's communication style to fit in all of those spaces and to reach people in the way that they need to be reached. I'm not sure, you know, in the question, if there's a question there about coordinating the message with the other Democratic clubs. I guess that's a discussion we could have as a club if that's something we wanted to do. I really value independence and decision making, you know, independent from what others are doing, while also, of course, recognizing that we're all Democrats with some shared values. So that's something we can work on and develop as we go. And thanks for the question. It's a very good question.
Thank you, Megan. So I'd like to touch on that. The world has changed in the last few years, and while our local newspaper is important, sadly, their subscriptions have gone down. And I'm not sure young people read daily newspapers. So figuring out how to reach them through Facebook and Instagram and making ourselves available on the website and reaching them directly through email and other ways is going to be really important in the future. So that was a good question and a good response. So anyway, and I have a question from one of the members. Is this list of candidates available? Yes. We have sent it out a couple of times in our weekly emails and as the board candidate list, but I'll make a note of the person who hasn't seen it. If any of you have not seen the list and you want it from me, send me an email to president@desertdemocrats.org. It is in the list of the candidates with a link to their bios is in the latest newsletter, which I think went out last Monday or Tuesday.
Lori,
Can
I interject something? Yeah,
yes.
we'll also have those links on in the next week. You know, all the candidates will again be referenced, and also their videos that they're doing here right now in the meeting.
Yes. So if you have a nomination that you want to privately submit to me, go ahead and send it to President@Desert Democrats by this Monday. The reason is we need to talk to the person, get their bio out there if they're willing to run, and add them to the list and let all of our members know that we have one or two or however many additional candidates running for the board, because we need, our bylaws call for us to hold this election in February of every year. So the plans are that we will hold this election on or before February 15th. And we will do it electronically. So I want to thank you so much to all the people, the volunteers who've stepped up to offer their time to keep Democrats of the Desert going strong and vibrant in the future. And so thank you so much to everybody. And as I said, if you have further questions, you can email me, or any nominations, you can email me, president@desertdemocrats.org. So we're almost on time. 2:45 was the time that we thought we would start our speaking on COVID. And so I'm going to introduce our current program chair, Nettie Thompson, who is going to get that rolling for us.
Dory, when will the ballots come out?
I don't have a firm date on that yet, Robert. Jimmy and I are working on it. We sort of have to wait because we have to see if we get any more nominations from today or in the next 2 days. But I would say we would give people at least 5 days to vote. And if we want to have the vote in by February 15th, that means we have a target of getting the ballots out by February 10th.
Okay.
Okay. And we will remind people repeatedly that it's there and we want, okay. So, all right. So now let it turn it over to Betty.
Dory,
Yeah.
let me interrupt you just for a moment. Do you want to mention who is here that will be staying on the board?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
everybody gets a chance to know who those folks are.
Yes. Okay. So the remainder of the board, okay, I'm going to pull up my cheat sheet because in this time of COVID, my brain doesn't always work well. So those who will remain on the board who aren't running this year, their positions are not up for election this year. Steve Brooks, who's on the call today, he's Citizens Lobby Day Chair. And he suggested that emphasis to me. And so we made that a board position. And Citizen Lobby Days, and the name itself is pretty self-explanatory. If you want to volunteer to join Steve in any kind of lobbying, let us know. His email is sabrooks2016@outlook.com. Then Fergus Curry, Fergus is the outgoing fundraising chair. Continuing on the board is Michael Finland. And I'm not sure if Michael could be with us today. He works full time. Michael is the candidate development chair, another really great volunteer who brought me that idea also that that we should have a person dedicated to helping local candidates run for office. And Michael ran the endorsement process last fall when he organized and conducted over 50 interviews with local candidates. Susan Jaffe is hospitality and events coordinator right now, and that's going to change a little bit. Susan has so kindly offered to be the technical person for communications, which is a really big job. So Susan will be staying on the board and taking up a different role. Also staying on the board is Kathy Snyder, our membership chair, who's doing a great job. And if you haven't paid your 2021 dues yet, please do so. That's it. Oh, Patrick Weiss. I'm sorry, Patrick. Community outreach. And that's another fairly new position on the board. And it's been tough during COVID. But Patrick has some great ideas going forward, like forming caucuses or committees of different groups of people so that we can reach out. And I will say that Patrick and I and Patrick's predecessor did go to College of the Desert's student council several times to introduce Democrats of the Desert. And we were giving them information before COVID hit about our meetings. So we did attract a couple of new members from there. And so we will, going forward, it's important to try to get some more youth in the club for the club to stay alive. So Mary, I will get back to you about your dues on how you can mail in a check. So that's a question I just saw. So I'm turning it over to Nettie now so we can go to our speakers, our guest speakers today.
Okay, thanks, Dory. Welcome, everyone. I am your soon-to-be outgoing program director. It's been kind of a wild 2 years, and you know, one of the things that we discovered is that because so many people are at home, we've often had kind of an easier time of it, having people come on board to speak with us and help us understand issues and concerns we have that matter to us. And I think we'll be putting out another survey to ask members what interests them here in 2021, with everything having shifted. I know there's excitement about what's going to be happening in our government. So And I'm guessing that'll be out in the next couple months probably. And would love to have everybody add their ideas, their thoughts about what they'd like to hear. Today, what we're going to do is hear about vaccines. And I think that's of interest to most people, whether you're in favor of vaccines or maybe not so much in favor of them. But I recently noticed that there was a poll, I think it was under 2,000 people, but 6 out of 10 people do not know how to access vaccines, where to go, what tier they're in, what their timing is, and all of that. So today we've got 2 speakers, and we've got a dear friend of mine, Dr. David Hunter from the University of Minnesota. He comes to us from Hawaii, and he actually, just as I was coming on, I didn't realize I could shift my computer so I could see everyone. Kind of crazy, but now I know how to do that. So David is going to talk to us about how the vaccine actually works, because it's a new formulation, as probably most of us know. And then we're going to hear from Greg Rodriguez, who is Manny Perez's program director. And he's going to talk to us about what the vaccine distribution plan is here in our county and give us some updates. I spoke with him briefly. He said it's kind of a moving, fluid target. So I'm sure he'll do his best to give us the latest there. But we're going to start with David, and we're going to hear from each of them for about 10 minutes, and then also have a Q&A time. There might be some questions about what's being said. So David, I know you're there. I saw you once.
I'm here.
All right, David.
So my name is Dave Hunter. I'm a retired physician at the University of Minnesota Hospital and a very close friend of Nettie's. I am not an immunologist nor a virologist, and therefore there may be some questions that you might have that I would not be able to answer, but I've been staying fairly close to the vaccine development literature, and therefore I should be able to do at least a good view of taking a good job of taking a large view of the problem. The takeaway message is going to be that these vaccines that you see now, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, are basically modern miracles, and they're incredibly, incredibly safe, safer than any vaccines have been in history. And therefore, I think that you should feel very comfortable in getting them. Let me tell you very quickly about 2 things that you need to understand in order to understand about vaccine. The first is how your body reacts to a viral infection like you would get with COVID. And then also to tell you a little bit about how vaccines have worked historically. So in general, when you get a viral infection, it can only get through those cells that are exposed to the outside world. So it has to be essentially through your GI tract or your respiratory tract. So you either breathe it in or you eat it in. Once it gets into those particular areas of your body, it can actually, the virus can penetrate into the cells, and it has adapted mechanisms so that it can do that. And the cells are therefore the lining cells of either your breathing or your eating areas. Once it gets into those cells, it sets off a cascade of events that results in your body eventually not only producing local factors, methods, chemicals to fight the virus, but in addition, a systemic response that's governed by your immune system, that is basically your lymph nodes, your spleen, your blood, bone marrow. And what that system does is it produces both antibodies, which you've heard about, which are simply the body's little chemicals that attach to the virus itself, to specific portions of it to help block it from doing anything. And in addition, it produces killer cells, primarily killer T cells, that can actually find these abnormal cells in your body, recognize them as abnormal, which itself is a bit of a miracle, And then once it recognizes them as foreign, destroy them using a variety of built-in chemical methodologies in the cell. The second thing is how did vaccines even come into being? And I think that everyone should realize that vaccines have been around since before the end of the 19th century. So in the late 1800s, people understood that they could actually give people chopped up viruses or viruses that had been killed with heat or some other mechanism so that they didn't get real sick, but they got the virus anyhow. And then they developed an immune response to it that prevented them from getting the virus infection in its worst form. These types of vaccines continued until literally the last 20 to 25 years. And then in the last 20 years, people began to realize that they could use portions of the virus, or they could actually use the DNA or RNA signals inside the virus to cause our body to effectively show cells as if they were viral cells and let our body essentially be the mechanism by which our own defense systems are built up without having to get any infection at all. And this is how the new viral vaccines for this COVID virus are actually working. As you know, both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are called messenger RNA vaccines. And what they have done in the last decade is figure out good ways to edit genetic codes so that they can put the genetic code for one specific protein from that virus into a package that they package so that that RNA gene is protected from our bodies. If you just inject RNA material into your body will destroy it very quickly, both because it's foreign and because of the fact that your body doesn't like RNA just being out and about. That's one of the reasons that these are so very safe, because if any RNA gets essentially loose in the body, it is destroyed almost immediately. This vaccine had to be encapsulated in a liquid capsule that is mainly fat material. And those capsules, which are nanoparticles, were only developed in the last 5 to 10 years. And they allow that RNA to get into the local cells where this injection of the vaccine is done. In other words, it gets into the cells that are in the muscles where the vaccine was injected. And then once it is in those cells, the RNA comes out and is used as a messenger to show our cells where that RNA exists, how to produce this little tiny piece of protein that represents the virus. And that little piece of protein gets out into our bloodstreams, gets out into our immune system, and it stimulates this response that is both antibody response and a cell response. And then this response eventually, therefore, provides you with protection against infection from both sides of your immune system. RNA will never get into your cell nucleus. RNA is very rapidly decomposed when it is inside your cell, where it is in order for you to produce these little pieces of the virus. But it is rapidly decomposed by the normal mechanisms that dispose of RNA very quickly, literally in the matter of hours to at the most a couple days. All RNA within your cell, once it has been used, is deconstructed and decomposed and turned into its basic ingredients. So these vaccines represent technology that's basically only 10 to 15 years old. It represents some of the most brilliant discoveries having to do with genetic codes and their manipulation. And it lets our own bodies be the thing that generates the little pieces of the virus that then our body can in turn recognize and turn into an immune response. Incredibly safe, incredibly effective. Most vaccines have effectiveness in the range of about 70% of people protected. That's the average up till now. Now with this new way of producing vaccines, you are seeing effectiveness of 95%. That means out of any 100 cases that, that happen to normal people, 95 of them will be completely prevented by having the vaccine. And those cases that people have had are always mild. No severe COVID cases have occurred to people who were vaccinated in the trials to date. And so they're incredibly powerful, incredibly safe. And I would encourage everybody to get one. And believe me, I'm going to be at the head of the line as soon as they let retired physicians get in line, which won't be for a while, unfortunately. Back to you, Nettie.
Okay, Nettie, are you unmuted?
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you very much. I noticed that there are some questions though, so I'm going to check on those before we lose you.
Does David need to go? Because
I don't think David does, but I just,
No, I'm retired and in Hawaii. I'm available as long as
thank you.
that's right. Okay, so, okay, let me just, for a question to Dr. Hunter. How or can different strains of COVID-19 affect those who have the current vaccine protection or not?
That's a very good question.
Okay.
And it is also, I think, a parallel question would be, okay, if this strain mutates, which is it has already done, as everybody knows, into a slightly more infectious or contagious version that came out of the first cases came out of Britain, but it's obviously here in the US. As this virus mutates, coronaviruses, by the way, do not mutate as fast as cold viruses. So in general, coronaviruses should be quite stable, but as this coronavirus mutates, it should actually be completely susceptible to these vaccines because the basic portion that these vaccines target is the protein that you've all seen in the picture on the outside of the cell that kind of, or outside of the virus that kind of sticks out into space. It's the so-called spike protein, or also the S protein, S for spike. And that protein does not mutate significantly or at all in most of these coronaviruses because that is the protein that's responsible for the virus's ability to penetrate into your cells. And so it really can't mutate significantly without causing the virus problems with its effectiveness. So it should not only work against genetic variations of this particular coronavirus, but in addition, it may indeed be effective against others with minimal manipulation. You have to realize that genetic editing, like they use to make this strand of RNA that is producing the antibodies and the cellular response, that can be re-edited very quickly to respond to all sorts of things, new pandemics, different coronaviruses, new problems with other viruses. It's an incredibly powerful tool that just has now suddenly emerged into reality, and we're lucky. We're the first generation to get it.
Thanks, David. Yeah, that's helpful to hear, actually.
Yeah, there's another one for him.
Yeah, there's another question here, and this comes from Maggie Hamilton. I hear there are a lot of reactions with Moderna. I have a 75-year-old friend who has asthma and concerned about getting a severe allergic reaction. Is it safe for her? And that's a question I was going to ask you as well, in terms of just adverse reactions.
So most of the adverse reactions to both of these mRNA vaccines, because your body stimulates an immune response, they're the same kinds of reactions that everybody has always gotten from any vaccine they've had, like the flu vaccines, because your body is reacting to what it thinks is an infection. So you will get pain, you will get fever, you can get sometimes mild immune reactions. And for people who are hyperimmune, people who have had severe immune reactions, like let's say you're an asthmatic who has a severe immune reaction to peanuts or something like that for your asthma, or a severe reaction to pollen, you may therefore get an immune reaction to this vaccine. But that's not to say that it's dangerous, it's treatable. But if you have an immune reaction history, you should probably get the vaccine in a setting where you could get some type of response help if you needed it, like adrenaline or steroids or an inhaler or some other way of treating you. And that just makes common sense. And people who have any kind of reaction like that, you know, have problems with almost any vaccine. There are not a lot more reactions with Moderna. There have been a few cases of the Moderna vaccine associated with allergic reactions with people who got fillers, you know, when they get injections to puff up their cheeks or their lips or something like that. But those fillers are a foreign substance. And so when your body is reacting to the foreign substance of the virus or the viral antigen that this vaccine is producing, it sees another foreign substance and it says, whoa, hold it, that also is foreign. I may react to that. Those reactions have been very mild, simply swelling. They've also responded to things like steroids. And I don't think there is a vaccine reaction yet, except in those cases in people who are hyperallergic. And you should know that if you are, because you've usually had hyperallergic problems in your life up till then that would require you to get this vaccine under medical supervision. But believe me, getting the vaccine under medical supervision or getting the vaccine alone is way safer than getting the disease by orders of magnitude. And I think everybody needs to realize that.
Okay. Dory, do we have time for another question? Because there's one more here.
Yes, let's go ahead and do that one.
Do one more?
quickly
Okay.
for
So,
Dave.
David, this is from Grady Bruce. Some of the Chinese vaccines actually use the virus instead of RNA technology, and they're being adopted by some less developed countries and are less effective. Do you know if any of the vaccines being developed in the United States use the virus itself?
None of the vaccines that are being developed for deployment in the United States are using attenuated or killed viruses. That's a cheap and easy way to do it. It's relatively effective. That's in the 65 to 75% success rate. And it is for sure a great way to do it if they don't have either the money or the technology in their country to develop a DNA or an RNA-based vaccine. The two other vaccine candidates that are making their way in the United States are AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, and both of them use a different virus, not the coronavirus, but a different virus that is a known not bad actor, to take a piece of the DNA of the virus and get it into your body, get it into your cells. And then it does the same thing that the RNA does, except the DNA-based vaccines, that DNA has to get into the nucleus of your cell. It's then turned into RNA, and the RNA goes out and does the same thing that the RNA vaccines do in terms of producing an abnormal protein that then shows up on the outsides of your cells and produces the response. So none of the vaccines that are currently projected for USA use are going to be using attenuated or live virus of any kind.
Thank you.
Nettie, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I have a question, a quick question for Dr. Hunter.
Sure.
I have an 80-year-old friend that I called this morning, and she says she wants to wait for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because she only has to get one shot. And I tried to talk her out of that. So what's your take on that?
The Johnson &
afraid of
Johnson
needles.
vaccine is the only one of those four that is a single dose, and it seems to be getting fairly good effectiveness with a single dose. The benefit will be that once they start to produce millions of doses, that'll be millions of people instead of cut in half because of getting the second dose. But you know, as many of you people have, as I have, gotten the shingles vaccine, many vaccines require a second booster dose to reach their maximal effectiveness. Johnson & Johnson tested single dose, and it looked like it's going to be almost as effective, but not as much. I think that everyone has to realize that it is probably much safer to get an earlier available vaccine if you can, especially if you can get it now and get past the point where you're susceptible to the virus than to wait for one that's going to be a little bit easier logistically to get later on. I mean, this virus is deadly if you're over 75, and people that are over 75 should really be, you know, sort of knocking on the door of their health department saying, okay, where's my name in the line, you know, because this damn virus, if it somehow gets you, it's really nasty.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will keep emphasizing that to her, that I don't think the risk is worth it. And then somebody, Nettie, did you see there's another question?
Well, I think David answered.
Two more.
Yeah, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine data has not been fully vetted by the FDA, so we don't yet know its full effectiveness, but it's going to be close to that 80 to 90% category. So it's doing very well.
Okay, that was the question that was remaining. So
there's one about, is it safe to get a shot at a place like Indio?
Oh,
And
I didn't see that question.
Dr. Hunter probably doesn't know about that, but it's our fairgrounds where a medical group, I guess, and Greg can talk more about this when he talks about the safetiness of getting a shot at the Indio Fairgrounds versus a doctor's office, I guess.
Yeah, that's the topic, David, that's going to come up next, about how people get appointments and how they can arrange to actually get in and get an appointment, because
Very important.
yeah, I think it's problematic here. So thank you so much for giving up some of your Hawaii time to be with us today. I very much appreciate it. So feel free to stick around or leave, but thanks for joining us. I very much appreciate it. I'm sure we all do. Very helpful. Okay, so now we want to hear about what's happening with distribution and appointments and all of that from Greg Rodriguez. Greg, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yep. All right.
All right,
Please,
great.
go ahead.
Just to dovetail off Dave's point about people knocking on public health's door, trust me, they're knocking on our door. There is definitely no vaccine hesitancy at all. So I'm going to go through just a little bit about the basics of the distribution plan, and then really address more so some of the challenges we're experiencing and what we're doing as a county and actually state to address some of those. So I want to make it perfectly clear at the beginning, though, that the county has a vaccination plan, and we actually have an ongoing vaccination plan for mass vaccinations that we've had for decades. But over the last 9 months, we've been refining that vaccination plan to address effective distribution once we got vaccines. There's been some news reports that the county hasn't planned anything, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. What we're running into is the challenge, the biggest challenge is just the availability of vaccines. And that's not just a county problem, that's a state problem. And I think everybody is hearing now that it's actually a national problem. I'm going to give a website first that has a lot of great information that I'm not going to be able to cover, but it's got frequently asked questions. It has the tier structure in a great graphic form, as well as this is where you'll actually make an appointment when those open up. And that website is RivcoPH. So that's RIV as in Victor, COPH.org. And then it's /COVID-19-vaccine. So again, rivcoph.org/COVID-19-vaccine. So right now,
type that in the chat.
I'll put it, yeah, that would be great. So right now we are in our 1B tier. So just like the state has gone through phases and colors and tiers, and so our initial stages are labeled in tier as 1A, 1B, and 1C. 1A obviously was all of our healthcare workers, frontline workers, pharmacists who will eventually be dispensing the vaccines as well. So we've moved into 1B about a week and a half ago. That includes teachers, food handlers, agricultural workers, and those over 65. Originally, that was supposed to be over 75. But the federal and state government basically put out guidance thinking that that counties and states were not vaccinating enough, so they lowered that to 65. We literally found out that the day that the new tier structure went into place. And I know Les is on the call and has brought up a great point that we should look at moving that back to 75. And so we actually, the supervisor yesterday on a call with the local leaders as well as county staff is going to see about the county looking at that as well. Our distribution plan is basically a three-pronged approach. And what we're hoping to do is leverage existing providers. So to date, we've received about 168,000 vaccines at the county level. About 133 of those, or roughly 80%, have gone to private providers. So that's like your Borrego clinics, your Clinicas, Eisenhower, Desert Regional, DAP, et cetera, et cetera. And then about 35,000 have been kept for the county to do our vaccination clinics. So what we would like to do is encourage those providers to start vaccinating their patients, what a lot of them are not doing right now, because that point of care is easier to manage as far as appointments go. People are more comfortable with their primary care provider, and so we're really encouraging that. I will do a caveat here in that we are looking at possibly pulling back that percentage allocation to private providers for the simple fact that a lot of them are not vaccinating yet. But more importantly, that would give the county more access to greater vaccine, and then we can open up more appointments and get rid of the bottleneck that we're experiencing over the last few days. The second area of distribution are what we call pods, or point of distributions. And these are like the Indio Fairgrounds. We have 4 sites that are currently operating countywide. We will be opening 4 more week after next. One of those will be at the Palm Springs Convention Center, so that we'll have the western part of the valley covered as well. As we get more vaccines, we'll be able to open more of those point of distributions. We can literally stand these up in a day. So it's not a matter of not having the plans. It's not a matter of not having capacity as far as staff goes. It's really just the limited supply of vaccines. So again, as we get more vaccine availability, we'll be open more of those point of distributions. And then the third prong is what we're calling our community-based teams. And these are basically mobile vaccination clinics. These are for areas that are rural, such as Blythe or Desert Center, also targeting populations like our agricultural workers. We did a really successful event on Thursday. We vaccinated over 300 agricultural workers in Mecca, and so really demonstrated about the mobile vaccination plan as well. So now I kind of want to address some of the challenges, and welcome to my nightmare on appointments and scheduling. We, as a county, again, you register to that website I gave. If you don't have computer access or computer challenge, you can actually call 211 and they will actually register you at that site as well. And that has really been beneficial to our seniors as well. What we have seen though as some other challenges is skilled nursing facilities. Many of you may be aware that the federal government negotiated with Walgreens and CVS to do the vaccinations for our skilled nursing facilities and long-term care facilities. We are seeing some delays in those, and I've heard of a couple instances actually in the valley of that. So our county public health department is actually working, implementing what we call our SOS teams. Those were originally sent out to the skilled nursing facilities to assist with PPEs and testing. But we're utilizing those teams to go in and supplement the vaccination in those facilities because we know those are the most vulnerable. So registration challenges. This is where I'll hit on probably where everybody has heard today. We as a county are utilizing the CalVax system, and that's a database system that we use for any type of vaccination. The reason we are utilizing that is because of the need to input the data when we do vaccinate individuals. If we utilized or built our own system, which of course would take time and millions of dollars, we would actually have to have extra staff basically duplicating inputting that information into the CalVax system, excuse me. What we are seeing though is the CalVax system has its challenges. Today, for instance, we opened up 10,000 appointments online. A few days ago, we had our own issues with the county website. So we actually pulled that contract from an outside vendor, brought that in-house. So what people did see today is that the county website functioned well, but once you got to the state CalVax site, it was crashing. Or like my mom went through like the final stage 5 times and still wasn't able to get an appointment. So those are the challenges we are facing. We are already in talks with the state and have been for the last few days on the challenges to that system. What we're also asking too is if there's a way that they can change so you could actually pick an appointment before you have to fill out, say, the 5 different sheets, and then find out once you get all those filled out, you can't actually get an appointment. Or if there's a way to assign some type of like patient number or ID number so that you don't have to refill those out each time you sign on. So those discussions are happening, and we know that the state is looking at how to address that. We also heard yesterday on a call with the state public health department that they are piloting a new registration system in both San Diego and LA County and are looking to roll that out statewide. And it sounds like it's much more user friendly. So we are addressing those. I talked about the 10,000 appointments we opened up today. We know people got appointments because we scheduled 10,000 appointments in 32 minutes today. That's how fast they went. We had over 50,000 people that were accessing the site between 12 and 12:05. So that tells you, again, there is not a hesitancy to get this vaccine. So we are trying to work through those issues. Again, this again gets back to a lot of the reason for the high demand is not only because people want to get the vaccine, but a lot of the reason for the delays and the trouble with the registration is because of the limited number of appointments. The last time we had opened that appointment window that we had the problems with the county website and the appointments filling up, we'd only released 3,900 spots. Again, that gets back to that allocation of the vaccines from at the county level versus the allocation at the private provider level. And so again, that's why we're kind of looking at possibly adjusting that. We in fact got directive from the state yesterday, all counties in California, to relook at that allocation between private and public health departments so that we can get more of those out. I will say too, is what we have recently found out is we know that the response to the virus from the beginning from the federal government was a dismal failure. We also have found out we basically were lied to as well about reserves and vaccine distribution to states. So thank God Wednesday happened, because we've already seen more action in the last 3 days than we literally saw over 10 months from our federal government. So we're confident with the Defense Production Act, with other measures that the administration is taking, that we will be seeing a far greater supply of vaccinations. And as Dave mentioned as well, especially with the onboarding of the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm more than happy to take questions. I know they've been popping up and I haven't really been watching them. So I don't know, Nettie, if you just want me to go through those, or.
Greg, I think if you're willing to look at those and take them one by one. I know a lot of people are frustrated, like me and my husband, and I understand it now. There were 10,000 appointments and they went in 32 minutes. We were working on it for like 40 minutes and then realized all the appointments were gone. Yeah. So I think we all have to be patient, but do you guys remember Jaws? How one of the actors talked about what was awful was being in the water with the sharks there. And that's sort of how I feel, like our savior's almost here, but it's not. It's hard to get it, and so I'm sure there's a lot of angst out there. But go ahead and take a look at those.
And we're doing okay for time, Dory? That's what I was.
Yes, it's 3:22.
Okay. Yeah, Greg, if you can see the questions, go for it.
Yeah, I can. I'm going to start with Patrick White. Yeah, I'm going to start with Patrick Weiss. He asked, can health workers refuse the vaccine? Will they still be able to work with patients and/or public? Will they be required to wear a mask always if not vaccinated from this date forever? The last part about the mask one is a good one. Just that's actually a really good question too, is we've actually gotten that if people still have to wear a mask after they get the vaccine, absolutely. And you should still maintain social distancing. Some healthcare workers are refusing the tests. I'm not sure what individual institutions will do as far as their workload. So I really can't answer that fully. I will say there was initial reports, some of you might have seen it in the Desert Sun, that 50% of the county's healthcare workers were refusing the vaccine. That was a little misleading. Many of the frontline workers that do not have direct access to a lot of patients were not getting the vaccine, so that the other ones that are in more higher acuity areas could get the vaccine. Additionally, too, due to the original limited supply, so some of those numbers were a little off. So we are seeing actually a really good level of vaccination amongst our healthcare workers throughout the county, and that's not just county public health, but also our private settings as well. Let's see. Okay, some of these are just talking about the challenges that happened on the website, which we know. So why was, Steve Brooks asked, why was vaccine sent to private providers if they weren't ready to administer it? We're not sure it's a matter of not being ready to administer it. We know that the original doses that the private providers received went to their actual workers. And so, you know, they have vaccinated their workforce. We are actually polling those private providers now to find out when, if one, they are vaccinating patients, and two, when they do plan to do that. Again, the reason to allocate them to the private providers is you already have a built-in distribution system through a clinical setting. Additionally, as I said, you know, a place like a Kaiser or Desert Oasis already has a built-in scheduling system. And so that relieves a lot of the staffing pressure off of the county. It's important to keep in mind that we still, as a county, are dealing with the virus, full hospital capacity, testing, contact tracing. So any extra assistance we can get would be through that public provider network. Let's see. Again, the website. Yeah, the good point, Maggie. It does not save our information. I did address that we are in talks with the state on if there's a way to change that. And I understand that the new system that I said that they're piloting in San Diego and LA does that as well.
And there's a follow-up there about your second shot. Is there going to be, like, if you get your second shot at Indio, is anyone going to follow up with you to get, I mean, your first shot at Indio, is anyone going to follow up with you to get the second? Great
question. And so when you go to get your first shot, you're given a vaccination card, just like we had in school. And it has the date, obviously your information. It has the date you got your vaccine. It also has what type of vaccine you got, because if you get the Pfizer vaccine, the second shot needs to be the Pfizer. If you get the Moderna, the second shot needs to be the Moderna. And then it has the date that you should start thinking about, or should technically get your second dose. The Pfizer is a 21-day window. The Moderna is a 28-day window. CDC has put out some guidance as recently as yesterday that technically you can wait up to 6 weeks to get that second dose. We're not at a second dose level for any of the public that have tested. We've had no issues as far as those within the tier 1A system. After the last couple of days, our office has been a little concerned, as well as others, about the ability and ease of individuals to call and make that appointment. So the county is working on a different type of system to address that as well. And I will add is, again, that 211, we're working on staffing up that call center as well as our Office on Aging to address those second appointments as well.
Greg, do you
Yes.
get to choose between the Pfizer or the Moderna?
You know, I got that question from an elected official just this morning, and it's basically, you don't really get to choose. So it's like, say Indio site, they, you know, if they're getting Moderna vaccines, that's the one you're going to get at the Indio, and it varies back because we get allocations from both companies, and so it depends, you know, on what day we get those from the state as well.
So on any given date, it could be in Indio, Pfizer, or Moderna.
Correct.
Moderna, okay.
And you got the second vaccine question. Yes. Let's see. To refuse. Yeah, and Aaron answered my question on the right to refuse the vaccine. So thanks for Aaron for backing that up.
Eddie, could I add something, please?
Sure. Who's speak? Oh yeah. Okay.
Dr. Zendel, yeah.
Yeah,
Hi.
sure.
You know, one of the things I wanted to add is I think people are stressing out a lot. And of course, that's not really good for people's health. And it reminds me of, you know, don't forget there are 70,000 people in Riverside County who are now eligible with the new criteria. And they've got, what, 150,000 vaccines, if that?
700,000.
What we're going to see if people are crazy, we're going to have a stampede and people will be injured. And I've made the case to Greg and Manny, we should raise the eligibility to 75 to make sure all the healthcare workers and people with risk factors and over 75 get theirs first in an orderly fashion. But the vaccine is coming out. Eventually people will get it. Even 2 weeks after the second vaccine, you have to be totally careful. And after that, you still have to wear a mask and be socially distant, because even though the vaccine protects you against illness 95% of the time, it doesn't protect you against acquiring the infection and transmitting it to somebody else. We don't think, or we don't know. So I really think people have to step back. Spending 8 hours in front of the computer screen, pressing re-enter, trying to get that appointment can't be good for people's health. And I think people have to calm down. So that's my message.
This is Dory. I happen to remember that Les worked at Kaiser, and for those of us who are on Kaiser, the Kaiser website is still saying they're focusing on the first tier. They're not saying a word about age yet. If we're Kaiser, should we wait to hear from Kaiser?
Kaiser's going to open up to 75 plus. Actually, they're doing the first trial tomorrow for 75 plus. And I think other places are doing. Eisenhower is going to do 75 plus. And so it won't be the mad dash that you're seeing now with the county sites. So they should be, I know Kaiser is contacting people about the 75. Eisenhower in today's paper talked about 75. So I think that's going to be, when you're with a provider, that's going to be easy. On the other hand, if you can get an appointment with the county, wherever you can get an appointment, get an appointment. Don't wait to get an appointment just because you want to wait, unless you're younger, meaning 65 to 75, and don't have a complicating factor.
Agreed. And just to correct you, Les, it's not 70,000, it's 700,000 that are in that are eligible.
I meant 700,000.
Yeah,
I
know you did. So, and we actually got that as a question. How many people are currently in the 2 tiers? So that's the 700,000.
Someone called.
Dory.
Yeah.
If you go for Kaiser, if you go to kp.org, you can, if you're 75 or older, you can sign up for an e-visit to get the vaccine injection.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, to Les's point, this is the good thing that God is that we're finally getting, especially some of our larger healthcare providers. I understand Desert Oasis 2 will be beginning that as well relatively soon. So they are scheduling.
Are those the biggest providers, Greg, and Les? Kaiser, Desert Oasis, and
well, Eisenhower is probably the biggest, I imagine, Les. Outside, yeah, and then you've got you've got Borrego Health, which is primarily those on Medi-Cal, but they've got clinics throughout the valley as well.
Okay.
And I see there's a question here: are the formulas in dose 1 and dose 2 the same? Yes, they are. So those are the questions in the chat box. I'm happy to answer any more if you've got any.
More questions anywhere? Okay.
By the way, about the stressing out about the timeline, even though Fauci originally said we should stick to the original thing, that's because that's what the only studies have shown. On the other hand, theoretically, there's no reason to think it'd be any less effective a week or 2 or 3 weeks after you're due, especially since we know much of the response comes after the first vaccine and then it gets boosted after the second. So again, I think if you had to wait 5 weeks or 6 weeks after the first shot, there's no reason to think it's going to be any less effective.
Good to know.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to that and end with, I would just ask for your patience. I really want to give the county a lot of credit. When we had that first day that the system crashed, we had a new website up and running within a day. And while it didn't function completely perfect this morning, again, we were able to register people. I just want you to know that the supervisor and myself and the entire county team are trying to make this work as well as it possibly can. We're confident that if we had more vaccines, the actual supply, which we know will be coming, things would be running a lot smoother. So.
Okay. Well,
there is one more question.
Oh, okay.
Corinne?
That's it.
For the second dose, should we be trying to get on the website eventually to make an appointment for the second dose, or
If those dates open up when you're ready for your second dose, I would do that now if you can, just to get that. Like I say, I'm going to get a lot more information. I'll make sure I get this to Dory too. We're going to have a lot more information on the second dose stuff this week as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, we literally, it's like Dory says, we literally, things change on an hourly basis, literally. So.
Well, it's amazing that you got up a different website in a day. We know how tough that must be.
I see Francis actually had a question too. Francis Miller, good to see you, Francis. Will Indio have long lines? No, because of the appointment system, you're in and out. We do have people wait about 15 to 20 minutes to Dr. Hunter's point about in case there's any adverse reaction. We haven't seen any so far.
I do have a question, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Are there enough medical personnel? And if there aren't, will the county be looking for volunteers? Like, I'd be willing to be trained and give people shots.
Yeah, so we're not anticipating any problems with actually ability to dispense the vaccine with personnel. What's been great is pharmacists, dentists, we're actually looking at EMTs as well, are being trained to do the vaccination. So we don't anticipate any. If we got to that kind of point, Dory, we'd gladly take volunteers. So.
Okay. And Roberta Kay has a question. She's holding a hand up. Roberta, can you unmute yourself?
I think she raised her hand. Yeah, raised it on accident.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you.
Okay. All right. Nettie?
Yeah.
You want to make any last comments on that?
No, just a big thank you. I think this was really timely and very helpful to have heard from both of you. So very much appreciate your time and the information you've shared. So kudos.
Yes.
Very happy to have you here.
Yeah, and too, we're doing a lot, and we've gotten, I believe, much better in communicating too in the last few weeks as well. We're actually the only district in the county that has weekly calls with our leadership team. Wes is on many of those calls. I mean, it's every elected official in the Valley, from city council on up to the federal level, our Desert Healthcare District, business leaders, agriculture community. But what we're doing now too is recapping those meetings, as well as any other pertinent communication we get, and posting that on the supervisor's Facebook page. So I encourage you for updates. That's the best place to go. We actually just posted an update about what happened yesterday. So I encourage you to keep an eye on that website or on the Facebook page for the supervisor. So.
You know, the one thing that I would add as I think about the two of you coming on and helping us understand what's most current about the vaccine and the distribution is that, you know, it is critical to be patient with this, because while I understand we aren't starting from scratch in terms of a plan, it apparently has been pretty close to that. And so that states have had to coordinate now so quickly. I mean, a lot is happening in a very short time once Mr. Trump left office. So appreciate all the efforts. I'm sure it's just an enormous task. So thank you very much. Okay, that's it.
Okay. So don't go yet. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunter and Greg. We really appreciate it. I will work on my patience as far as getting an appointment. And I do have a couple of things I want to mention to everyone. If you requested a ballot to vote for delegates to the California Democratic Party, they had such a tremendous response this year that they have extended the deadline to get your ballot into the state. So the original deadline was you had to have your ballot in their hands by January 27th. They have extended it to February 3rd. Again, that is for folks who have stepped up to run in our two districts, the 42nd and the 56th, to serve the party and to help guide the party. We will put out more information on that this coming week, the extended deadline. So if you haven't mailed in your ballot yet, don't panic. you have some extra time to get that ballot in their hands. Then the second thing I wanted, and there are several DOD members, by the way, including myself, who are running for to be a delegate. And Patrick Weiss, who's on the call today, is currently a delegate and he's running again. So we have some dedicated DOD people who are stepping up and want to help the party. The next meeting will be February 27th after the vote for the board. So you will see your newly constituted formed board for the next year at least at the February 27th meeting. And Nettie and I are talking about what other speakers we might have that day. So if you have any ideas or any wishes, please send them to me at president@desertdemocrats.org. So with that, does anybody have a burning issue before we all say goodbye? Raise your hand. I'm going to put gallery view on so I can see as many people as possible. Any burning issues? I really, oh, Ellie does. Can you unmute yourself, Ellie?
Yeah, I believe I just did. First of all, this was a great program today. Congratulations to everyone that participated. I too am running to be an ADEM member, but more importantly, I just wanted to let you know the Democratic headquarters of the desert is still closed. However, we are available. We check the emails and we check the phone messages on a very regular basis. So if you have a need for something, or if you want to just vent, we've got the answering machine. We do check, as I say, I check it 2 or 3 times a week, but due to the virus, we are staying closed. And we're just hopeful that we can reopen soon. If everyone would just behave themselves and put masks on, maybe we could do that sooner rather than later. Anyway, thank you, Dory.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there were a couple of people that I will get back to personally, Corinne and Mary Jo. Mary, I don't know if you saw, I put the post office box where you can send your dues. If you want to mail in your dues, send them to Democrats of the Desert, P.O. Box 142, Rancho Mirage. That's in the chat. I would love it if you would please use Act Blue. It saves us money. So thank you so much. I can't thank all of our candidates who have stepped up to keep this wonderful organization going strong, and to thank our speakers about COVID. And let's all work on our patients and stay well, wear your masks, and take care of yourselves. Bye.